Okay, well, welcome everyone to a very special Connect and Reflect series. As you can see, myself and five of our adults with a disorder of the corpus callosum are taking over tonight. We're giving Deanna a little bit of a break, but we are going to continue our topic of grit and resilience. So just a recap for those of you that maybe missed my webinar last Monday where I kind of gave a presentation on this topic. We spoke about the main ingredients kind of being a growth mindset, resilience, and internal motivation. And I'm very excited about tonight because now we actually get to hear some of these lived experiences from our adults. All five of these have amazing stories to share and are all very resilient, wonderful people that I've been getting to know recently. And yeah, I'm excited for them to get to share their stories. So plan is we're going to kind of just go around one by one. I'll introduce each one. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about their individual story. And then we will, once we've got through everyone, we'll open it up to Q&A. And hopefully we'll have lots of time for that because I really want you all to get to hear from the adults that live this experience. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with Alana. So I'm going to give a little introduction. So Alana is 30 years old. She is from Virginia. She was diagnosed with partial agenesis of the corpus callosum before she was born. Fun facts. So Alana actually recently joined the board for the NODCC. So welcome to it's very exciting to have you involved with the organization. I know how passionate you are about, advocacy work and just spreading awareness. So I think this is going to be great to have you involved. She is a huge fan of Dave Matthews Band and has seen him 24 times since she turned 18 and has plans for at least two shows this summer. Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit about your job because I think especially over the last year, we've seen a lot of progress with that and you've been promoted and having all these great experiences. So maybe just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you ended up with the job that you have.
So I'm a kindergarten assistant teacher and absolutely love it. Did not know or think that I'd ever do that. Started last year as a substitute teacher and did aftercare and kind of just blossomed from there. The door opened for me to do this job and it's been incredible. I'm working with kids of all different types, all different backgrounds, and it's I'm blessed to be in the position that I am. But it's come this year has started, we have kids that have a bunch of different types of, like, they're all, like I said, different backgrounds, and some of the ways that they're learning and interacting are ways that I learned and interacted when I was a kid, and it's kind of taught, like, everything that I went through, I'm seeing them do, and the way that I'm approaching them is kind of how I wish that I could have had it. So it's been fun.
Yeah, what is that experience like for you, just seeing kids go through some of the same things that you did?
It was not easy at first, but then I had to take a step back and say, they're kids, they're learning. How would you have liked to approach this? How can you help them? And me helping them has also helped me in return. I've learned a lot of patience and had a lot of growth through it.
Yeah, amazing. I imagine that you know, it can be challenging at times working with kids and especially some kids with various disabilities. What has that experience been like just in terms of just challenges that come up for you?
It's not been easy, but it's reminding me to be patient and learn. You have to learn them and the best ways that, like, one kid may be like an auditory learner and you have to key in on that, and that what that kid's working on may not work for the other kid. You just have to learn them, and
Mm.
it's a process.
hmm I'm hearing some of that growth mindset there. Like you're, it sounds like you're learning as you go, and know that this is a process, and you're able to do that. What about internal motivation? What keeps you motivated?
I don't want these kids to go through what I did when I was younger. I was very misunderstood and kind of had to create my own pathway, which, if you think about it, we're creating our own pathways. We don't have Corpus Callosum. We had to do that. And creating like that helps.
So it sounds like similar to how I think that drive to work with NODCC, like you want to really support people and raise awareness. And it sounds like that's kind of tying into that. Um, I'm just thinking that, for anyone working with kids, it's a lot of energy. It's a very demanding job. Even if you have a corpus callosum, that's going to be exhausting at times, but especially if your brain is working so much harder. Um, I'm sure it's there are times where it's just easy to become exhausted. So how do you manage that? How do you manage your energy?
I take a lot of walks and I listen to a lot of music. And when I'm not working, my phone's on do not disturb. I'm watching sports. I'm doing things that make me happy and let my brain kind of relax. Like I'm looking behind me right now. I have a stack of coloring books that I've yet to break into that I cannot wait to. That's been one of my saving graces.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've got that resilience piece there where you've developed coping skills and some emotion regulation skills that works for you, and that's helping you. So that's great.
100%.
Um, all right. Well, I'd love to keep going with this, but I'm going to move on, and then we can come back to you when we get to Q&A. I'm sure people may have more questions. But thank you. All right. So I'm going to move on to Jackie. Okay. So Jackie is 35. She's from New York, and she was diagnosed with partial agenesis of the corpus callosum when she was 6 years old. Fun facts, Jackie has actually put together 2 NODCC regional meetings. So yay, thank you for doing that. And in her free time, she enjoys researching and reading about various historical topics, which is super cool. Um, so I wanted to come to you next because I think it's kind of a nice transition from Alana, where you actually also work with kids. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do, and your kind of career pathway?
So currently I am a teaching assistant in a middle school setting. So I work with 6th grade and 7th grade. And this is a brand new position that I had from September. And prior to that, I've kind of had quite the career. I was able to get my bachelor's degree and my master's degree within a span of 6 years. So I was kind of on a fast track path, and I had all these plans to get a teaching position right away. But that really didn't happen for me. I was overlooked in a few positions. And so instead of being stuck and constantly overlooked, I actually sought out other pathways, and I ended up getting a teaching position that I was in for 2 years. I worked with 2nd graders, 1st graders, and 5th graders. And so it was very enjoyable, but it was also very overwhelming. And I still really didn't have that groove to be in the classroom. And so I took a 3-year break from the classroom, and I was in public history. And I worked at a historic site. So I was still using my educational background, creating programs, things like that. But I did notice that I missed the kids quite a bit. So I transitioned back into teaching with being a teaching assistant. And then hopefully one day I will go back into my own classroom.
Thank you for sharing that. The main thing I hear in your story that I love is just so much resilience to be able to get through this and deal with that rejection, and to just keep persevering. And now to get to a job that you enjoy, and to do what you love. So yeah, I'm so impressed with how much you've persevered. I'm curious, how I'm sure there might be parents or adults here that are thinking, how did you manage a bachelor's and a master's in 6 years? I mean, that's the standard. Usually, I guess, like 4 years for a bachelor's, 2 years for a master's. But given how your brain works, were there things that really helped you to achieve that?
I think it's just continuous reading. I would reread my homework several times. I would take my time. I did not need any services in college, so it was just kind of on my own, or going to my professors. And I had this one professor for my bachelor's, and we were able to submit papers ahead of time, ahead of the due date. So he would go through them and then kind of critique us or make suggestions for changes. So that was very, very helpful. There were times where I did not do as well as I wanted to do, but I felt like I got through that class and it was a pretty respectable grade regardless. And I just kind of felt like I can do this, and I might not get straight A's for every class, but I think I got straight A's in the ones that were important.
So there's that growth mindset there of like, I can do this. And I'm just curious, like, I kind of getting back to the idea of resilience, like, what helps with that? Are there certain things that you do, or kind of things that you tell yourself that help you to stay resilient?
So a few years ago, when I was in therapy, my counselor suggested making a little index card, and it says breathe on it. So I posted several of them around the house, in my room, and if I felt overwhelmed, I would just look at that index card and remember to breathe. I also took a few classes for self-reflection and mindfulness, things like that. And I also do meditation. And I'm also a dancer, so that is also very helpful to bring myself back.
Amazing. So lots of good coping skills there. I love the little index card thing. I think we spoke last week, where I briefly mentioned having visual cues wherever possible. And I think that's a really great example within the context of resilience and coping skills of just having that reminder to breathe. I love that. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so we're going to move on. I'm actually now going to move on to Lexi. First of all, Lexi had a birthday the other day, so happy birthday. Okay, so now Lexi is 27 years old. She is from Michigan. She was diagnosed with partial agenesis of the corpus callosum also before she was born, like Alana. Fun facts: Lexi sang at Carnegie Hall in New York City as a sophomore in high school. She was the president of the Alliance Club when she was in college, and she is an avid snowmobile enthusiast. She even has her own snowmobile, which is super cool. I guess Michigan is a good place for that. Okay, so we are also going to continue this topic of kind of career pathways. And I'm just going to let you get us started by telling us what you do and kind of how you ended up where you are in your career.
Absolutely. So when I first started in the work field outside of college, I started in the massage therapy field. And then I realized after a year or so of doing that it was not for me. And then I was given the opportunity by my parents to be a patient care coordinator for them. And I've been doing that for over 3 years, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been a very nice difference from the massage therapy field to here. So it's really interesting how the difference is.
I'm going to ask a very specific question. In what way has grit played a role in your career pathway?
So as far as grit goes, I would say that it's taken a lot of grit to be where I'm at, because I started very, very doing minimal things like cleaning and that sort of thing. And I've gradually been able to do more difficult things like doing the invoices and things like that. So I've really tried to have that internal motivation to be able to just work farther and farther and to continue my goals of becoming a social worker.
Are there certain things, I know when we chatted briefly the other day, it sounds like one of the big challenges in this job was kind of learning how to do some of the harder tasks. Are there things that have helped with that?
Absolutely. So for me, I would say that repetition is a good thing for us with the DCC, as well as breaking things down and then working back up, and doing it and not letting the difficulties scare you or anything like that, to just be able to persevere through it and just be able to do it.
There's that, I think, that growth mindset again. And I know we chatted about this, where it's like initially there was that feeling of like, here are these things I really want to be able to do, and you've known this whole time like I can get there, and you've kept persevering. And I love that you brought up repetition. We've spoken about this before. I think I mentioned this last week, that I think I gave the example of like when you learn to drive a car and you initially have to think about every little tiny detail, and then eventually that becomes automatic because you do it over and over and over again. Your brain takes over and is like, we know how to do this. And it sounds like by doing that repetition piece, that's really helped take away some of the energy that your brain is having to use and some of that effort, and it's become easier.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing. I know we also, when we spoke the other day, you and I brought up a growth mindset. I love that you made the point that hasn't always been the case for you. You didn't always have a growth mindset. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and what's helped you develop that?
So I would say that my coworkers have been a big factor in the growth mindset, as well as my friends and family. I really, and as well as therapy, actually. So when I initially started at my parents' place, I really was like not there. I was in a fixed mindset at the time. And so with just being with my coworkers and my family and just having that growth and be able to mature in that way, it has been really nice.
I'm glad you brought up the support from other people. It sounds like that's been a big part of you kind of believing in yourself. I guess for our caregivers, parents, friends, and things that are watching, are there certain things that friends, family members have done that has really helped support you with this?
So I would say definitely my patient, or we call them PCCs, but our front office staff is amazing. My former manager, Carrie, has been amazing. Usually we would have meetings about every other week just to check in and that sort of thing, just to make sure everything is okay there and we're still working towards those goals and things like that. And my immediate friend, coworker, that I work with every day, Veronica, has been really nice as well. And she's really helped me grow that growth mindset.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a part of it is like having someone to sit down with and kind of go through planning and evaluating goals can be useful, would you say?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm going to now move on to Cassie. All right. So Cassie is 33 years old and she is from Ontario, Canada. She has complete agenesis of the corpus callosum, and she was actually diagnosed when she was 15 years old, so when she was in 10th grade. And then fun facts, Cassie was a poster child for the Precious Moments campaign at Toronto's Hospital for Sick Children. And she was also one of the Canadian student delegates to attend the 90th anniversary of Vimy Ridge. I hope I'm saying that right. Okay, so we're also going to continue on this kind of school career pathway conversation. Same thing. You want to tell us what you do and kind of how you got there?
Okay, so I now work as a direct support worker for people with disabilities in a group home setting, and I work under the title as a social service worker. So in the United States, that's the equivalent to your social work associate's degree. and how I got, like, it wasn't what I wanted to do. I spent all of elementary school and high school preparing to become a registered practical nurse, and it was taken away in an instant by a car accident the weekend before college. And it had to, like, the experiences I had from elementary school to high school really helped pivot the change, because I had other experiences and so ideas for similar pathways that just weren't in the medical field, but they were still in the social human services field. One of the biggest things that really helped me as a child was my parents' advocacy in the school system. There was a time when I was in the early years that if they had kept me in the life skills class, if they had put me in a life skills classroom, I would not have graduated in high school with a high school diploma, which would not have allowed me to move on to college. And their determination to say that I should be in a life skills, in a regular classroom with support, because one of my determinations on the IEP was social interaction with peers. And if I wasn't going to have those social interaction with peers, I would not attain that goal. And just that designation set me up for college.
I think that's a great example of parents really supporting those long-term goals and helping identify what it is that you need to get there. And in your case, it sounds like that environment, that school environment was really valuable for you. One thing that I'm curious about in your case, because unlike the others, you've been diagnosed much later. What was that like? You know, to be in high school, or I think that's high school, and to get that diagnosis, how did that change things for you? And yeah, just tell us a bit about it.
It was a lot of validation. So I was actually born with a heart condition called tetralogy FLO, and I was already closely watched from preschool into the education system. So I had always had extra support. I had always known I was different. I had trouble learning. So for me, because we didn't know why I had tetralogy FLO, because no one else it's not hereditary in my family. So for myself, it was very validating in knowing that there was a reason for why I was the way I was. And it gave me a way to understand what my challenges are and where I could improve, and gave me strategies when I would look up certain things on how to move forward. A lot of my social skills actually came from college. When I was reading, I had to take a group communications course, and we learned about interpersonal group skills and all that stuff. So a lot of my learning came from that classroom.
I'm curious, when you received that diagnosis, what was that like, sharing that with your friends? You want to tell us a bit about that?
So elementary school wasn't great. So in high school, I had made my friend group very small, and a lot of them were very supportive. And when I found out, it was like a shock, right? And everyone wanted to know why I was in the hospital and all this stuff. So like, it wasn't why I was in the hospital, it was found by a CT scan. And so we're all like around a computer screen, like, what is this? And we're reading about it, and they're like, oh, okay. So like, yeah, we understand what you're like, why you don't understand jokes, and why you're always interrupting us, or your conversation is always lagging because you're coming up with something we talked about 2 minutes ago. And those few friends would start taking time to tell me about the joke later or in the moment. Or they would be like, okay, hold on, you're interrupting. And then I have to hold my thought and stuff like that.
That's a really, like another really nice example, I think, of other people being supportive and really helping. to guide you at times. So I would love to keep this conversation going, but I just spotted the time. So we'll come back when we get to Q&A. But last but definitely not least, we have Sarah. And I want to begin by, well, no, let me do the introduction and then I'll say what I was going to say. Okay, so Sarah is 41 years old and she's from North Carolina. She was diagnosed with complete agenesis of the corpus callosum when she was 4. And fun fact, Sarah is very passionate about spreading and raising awareness and has petitioned her town to get a proclamation for disorders of the corpus callosum day, and continues to keep doing that. So fingers crossed. What I wanted to say is just a huge congratulations to Sarah, because what, a couple of days, I don't know, right? Thursday, Sarah is going to be 1 year sober. So just congratulations. I'm so proud of you. And that's actually what we're going to talk a little bit about, because this has obviously taken huge amounts of grit to be able to do this. So let me just start by asking, like, what motivated you? What motivated you to start this journey, and what has motivated you to keep going with it?
So I had been playing around with the idea for the last 2.5, 3 years. My sister got sober, and so she would always put stuff on Facebook about her journey and would always end it with, "If you're interested, let's talk." And I would send her a message and say, "Hey, I'm interested. I don't have a problem. I just have no money." And we would kind of just leave it with that. And then last February, I started dating a guy who was a recovering addict. And so out of respect for him, I decided to quit drinking. I didn't want to be intoxicated when he called. And, it was just, okay, like, that's what I'm just going to do. And then about 3 months in, about a week before we broke up, I kind of just could tell, you just have that feeling like it's not going to work. And I remember standing in my apartment and I said out loud to myself and my cat, okay, like, I'm no longer doing this for him. I'm doing this for myself. And so I did. Like, we broke up and I was like, okay, I'm going to continue this journey. The longer, it went, the more people started noticing the difference in me. My thought process was clearer. My, you know, I, yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I want to point out that, yeah, even personally, just my interactions with you over the last year, there's been a huge change in just the way you think about things and your mood, and I think your stress level, and it's had such a positive impact on you. But that also takes a lot of resilience. Like, how have you managed when it got tough?
Before I go there, the other big thing was I was fascinated with dates. Like, any anniversary, bad anniversary, I was like, I was counting down the days to it, and it was going to be a horrible day. And I don't do that anymore. Like, it's just a day to me. And I'm positive. Like, yeah. What was the question?
Yeah. How do you stay resilient when it gets tough?
I reach out to my people. I've got a group of people that support me 100%, and who are there for me. And I've always had the motto of not giving up. But like, I just keep going. I go to meetings. When I first started, I was like, I could go hang out at the bar and just drink a root beer. And, now I'm like, okay, that's not even my scene anymore. Like, and I'm okay with that. And just keep on keeping on. It's literally one day at a time, and remembering that I'm doing this for me, and remembering, I do go back and, look at how I was before. I just glance back. It's like, okay, like I'm not that person anymore. I like this person. I can finally look at myself in the mirror and smile. And
One of the things you commented on was you started to get a lot of positive feedback from other people related to this, like the way that you've changed. And do you think that has maybe helped? I guess I'm getting at, like, how have other people supported this journey? How have they
yeah,
helped?
they when someone, especially a counselor, family and friends, like, they can say whatever. And don't get me wrong, I'm very, they're great and very supportive. But when my counselor points out that my thought process is clearer and I'm making more sense, even in my like rambling, like it makes me want to do it more. It opens me up more to where, okay, all right, this is good. This is, I'm not walking around, hiding and like slumped over. Look, like this is me, and and people are seeing it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to move on to Q&A so that we have plenty of time. I'm not Deanna, I don't usually do this, so I didn't announce, like, we have the Q&A thing to drop questions in, but you can use the Q&A thing or the chat. I will check both. We do have one question that is really for all of you. And yeah, I'm curious too. Do you all have isolated ACC? So I'm just gonna, well, actually, raise your hand if you don't. So when we say isolated, we mean it is just agenesis of the corpus callosum, no other brain malformations. Does anyone not have isolated? Okay, Lexi. Okay, I'll start with Lexi.
So I have the PACC, obviously, as well as hydrocephalus and Arnold Chiari malformation as well. And I'm doing well thus far. My last shunt surgery was a decade ago, so I think I'm doing pretty well.
Okay, and then Jackie, I think you raised your hand.
So not only do I have the PACC, I also have heterotopia, which is extra gray matter. And then I also have seizures, but I haven't had a seizure since 2010.
Oh, amazing.
And I have epilepsy as well.
Okay, so I'm curious because I'm sure we might have other people that have this question. Do you take medication for managing seizures? And you found that that's, well, you've not had one since 2010, so I guess that helps.
Yes, I'm on medication for that.
And then Cassie, I think you raised your hand too.
No, I didn't. I almost dropped my fidget.
Oh, okay. And then Alana and Sarah, are you both isolated?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like depression doesn't count, right?
So I guess when we're talking about isolated, we are specifically referring to whether there are any other brain malformations. So we would count your case isolated if not.
Yes.
Okay, so we have okay, let me start with this question. So this would be for Jackie and Lexi. How was growing up with seizures? And was it easy to control?
So I would say that my seizures were a lot worse before I got the vagal nerve stimulator, along with being medicated as well. I would say I had a couple a day, I would say. I don't know. My parents would know more than I would, but anyways, I would say that it didn't really bother me unless it was like a tonic-clonic seizure. And especially after having the vagal nerve stimulator, I actually have a lot more energy after a seizure than I used to when I didn't have it.
What about for you, Jackie?
So I've only had 7 seizures because the medication has helped, and then they realized, okay, well, maybe let's take you off, taper it off. And then I ended up having one. I also had 2 breakthrough seizures, so I wasn't the medication that I was on wasn't working. It wasn't at therapeutic level. It was actually too much of the medication. So that's how I came down from that medication and started something new. And with that, I actually got some very severe anxiety. So not only changing medications, but I also had to work through that anxiety. And and when I was younger, I had to take medication at school. So I had a lot of peers asking me questions. What's that? What's that? What does it taste like? And so I would just kind of brush it off and just say, oh, it tastes like cherry and or something like that. And I wouldn't go into depth because also it wasn't developmentally appropriate at that time. I was only 6 or 7. So there wasn't really much I could explain.
I think that actually leads in nicely to another question that we have here. And I'll open this up to all of you if you want to all answer, or if just one of you, it's up to you guys. But how do you tell others about your disorder of the corpus callosum? Cassie?
When I'm in a supportive and safe environment, I always lead with like, like an interesting fact when you're going around a circle and like, what's an interesting fact about you? And I'm missing part of my brain. And people get interested and they're like, well, what does that mean? And like, why is that? And so I'll use the highway in a certain environment, especially with youth. I'll use the analogy about the highway and like the where you're on the expressway versus the collectors and information passing between the 2 hemispheres. One of the things that I have struggled with and I've seen negative consequences from is telling people I thought I trusted and then them using that and what they know about me against me and starting like even in the workforce and the teasing. So one of the things I'm doing now as an adult is learning about boundaries and like when do I say it and who do I say it to.
I think that is very a very important a very important skill for everyone to have. I'm curious, how are you developing that? Because learning to set boundaries is not easy. How is there anything that's helping you to learn this skill?
Honestly, it's the anxiety of not going through it again in the workforce. So it's having me step back and be a little bit more timid when I'm meeting new people, but it's not, I'm not being shy. I'm just like, I'm more quiet, I'm more reserved. And as I get to know the person, if they become into my circle of support and they're closer into the middle, then I would share more. I'm still developing the skill. In the peer groups, in the mental health setting, I'm more open about it because there's more tolerance and acceptance.
Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share how you tell people? Okay, let's go with Alana and then Sarah, and then I'll go on to another question, if that's okay. Okay, go for it, Alana.
I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Cassie said. The anxiety of like, what if kind of fuels that conversation. But I've known about my ACC my entire life, but didn't really do anything about it until I was 24. Because I kind of I had enough of wondering like why I was different and wondering if people knew that I was kind of different. And then I don't know if a light bulb went off in my head or just what happened, but I was like, you know what? If I explain it to people, maybe they'll kind of embrace me or say, okay, you're not any different. Like, you're not any different per se. But I think talking about it kind of empowers all of us. And sometimes like I'll talk to my best friend about some of my issues that I'm having. They're like, that's a normal person issue. And it kind of eases the anxiety of it's not just us.
I love how you're all just like nodding along. It sounds like that's really helpful to have people point out, like, yeah, everyone struggles with this, and it
Yeah,
kind of normalizes some of those challenges.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Sarah.
So I I usually start out with asking people if they've heard of the Rain Man because I'm old school. And when they say that, I get into the whole like, the whole thing. It's about a real guy. I met him. Oh, and we have the same brain condition. And then they ask me what it is, and I really like just saying it really fast. At least at first, just so they can I'd like seeing the look on their face. Um, but yeah, I tell them about it, and sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's not. I've actually had people start talking slower to me. Um, and but I've also learned that, hey, that's them. Like, I'm still the same person, and um, yeah, and just being myself, being comfortable. Like ACC is part of me. Like it doesn't make me who I am, but it is part of me. And I don't hide that. I don't hide my quirks or anything. I'm like, yep, okay, yep, that's me.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to another question. Thank you all for sharing. So how can we prepare our child in high school for starting their career once they are an adult? Or I guess also, how have people in your life or your parents, caregivers, while you were in high school, how did they prepare you for your careers? And anyone can, yeah, Lexi.
I kind of feel like I was the lucky one because my had a vocational school attached to it. So I kind of knew which way I kind of wanted to go in a little bit just by doing those classes and things. But then, like, right a few weeks before my senior year, I was like, and my mom and dad suggested massage therapy to start off with, just to see if that would be a good fit. Honestly, I didn't really think it would be because I would rather, do counseling or something like that or social work because that's just me. And I realized that after going through the program and getting my certificate and things like that. But eventually I found my path and I carved my own path the way I wanted to.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Who else wants to share? Yeah, Cassie.
I was, again, heavily supported in high school. My parents were always at the parent-teacher interviews, and part of the parent-teacher interviews, you were also able to make appointments with the resource teacher that you were assigned to. And my mom, no matter what courses I was taking, no matter what challenges or successes I was having, always met with the resource teacher and said, okay, what path is she on? What courses does she need? What extra support and stuff, things around that area. I'm hard of hearing, so I was also given a hearing resource teacher in high school, where I was able to get extra support in going through the material from classes. One of the best things I learned, in part of we were talking about grit. I'm really good with languages. I'm really good at learning different languages. I was better in my French class than I was in my English class. And there was our school had Latin. And there's this preconceived notion that if you have a disability, you can't do languages. So like even my French, I had to fight for to take all the way through. And one of the biggest regrets I have from high school was not speaking up about wanting to take Latin instead of art. And that self-awareness helped me in college in saying, no, I need to have a reduced course load, in different things like that I didn't necessarily have in high school.
Mm-hmm. I want to highlight one of the pieces here that I hear from you is like figuring out what your strengths are and what you're passionate about. And I brought this up last week, and I think this is one of the ways, you know, parents can kind of, or caregivers can guide that process of just helping you figure out what it is that you enjoy, and figuring out what those strengths are. And it sounds like maybe it would help, you know, stepping in and advocating. And in your case, you have parents that were able to help figure out, you know, go and meet with teachers and figure out what courses you need. And you know, we spoke last week about sometimes that's the piece that's challenging when you are missing a corpus callosum, is the actual planning and decision making and like mapping out a plan. That's where they were able to step in and help do some of that.
Very much so.
Yeah, great. Would anyone, you said something that makes me want to go to another question because it ties in, but I want to give everyone a chance to answer this question if they want. Does anyone else want to share how parents supported, you know, high school to career transition? Next question. Okay. So what you mentioned self-awareness. So that made me think of, we've got this question here. So how did your parents or, you know, friends, people in your life help you with self-awareness and social skills? And again, open to anyone. Yeah, Jackie.
So more geared toward self-awareness. I would get fixated on things and it had to be this way. And I was so focused on something. And then my parents just kind of said that it's okay that it doesn't work out or things like that. And so I would, they were, I'm sorry. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Would anyone else like to comment on this question? Yeah, Sarah.
My sister has helped with just you know, pointing things out, but not in a mean way, you know, with, you know, different, like either different situations, or if she sees me or hears me, you know, doing something, you know, she'll point it out in a way that I can hear it and understand it. And it's not so like much attacking and like degrading as it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's put in a way of, you know, where I can hear it and not where I'm going to automatically shut it down. And you know, and I have other people in my life that do the same thing, where you know they can, especially now, I'm much more able to hear feedback and, you know, hey, this is what you're doing, and go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, I have a problem with that. I need to work on that.
Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second while I read this question because we have another one. Okay, so my son, who is 4 years old with complete ACC, tends to focus on numbers, letters, shapes, music, math, reading, how things work rather than people. Is this something you have experienced, something similar? And could you see encouraging this being helpful or harmful? Yeah, Alana.
Well, based off my fun fact, we all know that I'm extremely obsessed with music, and it's something that I've always been passionate about. And it's been that way since I was very, very young. And my parents they fought it at first, but I told them when it was the semester before I graduated college, I said, I don't know if I really want to be a teacher. Foreshadowing, I am. And I said, I kind of want to try something different. And I stumbled upon radio. And I worked at radio for 5 years, and using something that I was obsessed with kind of helped me grow. And I learned a lot of people skills and social skills, and kind of have how to navigate my life through something that I was obsessed with, and I absolutely loved it and would not ever trade that experience for anything.
I love that answer. Thank you so much. I can see the others nodding along, and I agree. I think, if you, mean, that's a long list of some really great interests. And I think if you have a child that naturally has those kinds of interests, nurture them. I can't see the harm really in encouraging things that they are good at and enjoy, and it's going to help build their self-esteem and their sense of self-competence. I think that's right. And self-efficacy. And so yeah, I want to give the others a chance to chime in here. Yes, Sarah.
Sorry, screen went weird. No, I can become very obsessed and fixated on things. I'm obsessed with numbers, so much so that I went and got an accounting degree just to get it. Um, but and I love knowing how things work, and just information and processes, and so much so that, I have to now tell people that I really don't have any say in the matter. I just know how it works because I ask questions. But just I don't, and I don't think it's a bad thing. you know it keeps the brain going, it keeps the brain working and figuring things out, and you know um which is really good for our brains.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, before there's one more question before I go on. Would anyone else like to add before I think this may be our last question because of time. Yeah, Cassie.
I'm gonna echo what Alana said. My obsessions were anatomy and the brain, like just neurology. Those were my obsessions as a child and in high school because I wanted to become a nurse. And as it evolved, like after my diagnosis, it evolved to just being about the brain and neuroplasticity and like what we can do to change our brains. And then when I was learning about my social skills, it turned into behavior. And now I'm working, and I've turned it into a career. I'm working as a direct support worker in a high behavior home where I'm having to implement behavior support plans and being initially part of the team in building those skills, helping others build those skills.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah, I think overall, you're all making this point of like you've followed your passions, and it's been really beneficial for, the outcomes in life. I think for the sake of time, I'm gonna stop with the questions there, and I just want to take a moment to say a huge thank you to the 5 of you. This is the first time we're doing a panel like this, and I'm so proud of all of you. You've all done an amazing job. For everyone, we are going to do more of these. So actually next month, and I don't know dates yet, but we are going to have a panel of adults that are in relationships, and that will be our topic. And I'm so glad Barb has jumped on, because we cannot talk about grit and resilience in disorders of the corpus callosum without acknowledging Barb and what she has done with this organization. You are just incredible. I can't even imagine what it was like for you having a child with this diagnosis, not having any support, and saying, all right, I'm going to create this organization and we're going to support other people. And just, the resilience that takes, and the perseverance is incredible. So thank you, because
that's very sweet of you. And I really want to thank Jasmin for running this for us, and our panelists, of course. Ladies, thank you so much. I've known most of you for a decent amount of time now, and I've watched you grow from children into adults and bloom in many ways. And I'm just so grateful that you guys are willing to share your story with all of our families.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and stop this, but we will, the newsletter will go out and we'll let you know when we've got more Connect and Reflect series coming up, that we do have them planned for next month. So keep an eye out for those. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
How do I stop recording? Here we go.